From the moment Jackson, Jace, Harper rode into the small frontier town, he could feel the weight of 100 eyes on him. Dust swirled around his boots as he dismounted, the leather of his coat stiff from sun and travel. He had heard the stories, whispers of the Apache girl who lived near the cliffs, untamed, proud, and unapproachable. Nayeli. They said no man could win her heart, that her laughter could cut through stone and her eyes could pierce a man's soul. But Jace had never been a man to shy away from challenges, and for some reason, he felt a magnetic pull toward her. Not for the thrill of conquest, not for the praise of the townsfolk, but for something deeper he could not yet name. The challenge had been laid out to him in a dusty saloon by the town's unofficial sheriff. Line up a series of glass bottles on the edge of the canyon's flat clearing. Each bottle gleamed in the unforgiving sun, and Jace could almost hear them calling his name, daring him to fail. If he knocked them all down, Nayeli would choose to be with him, as tradition dictated among her people when a challenge was met. Miss even won, and he would be nothing more than a laughingstock, his pride trampled in the dust along with the broken glass. The crowd, forming a semicircle around the makeshift arena, was thick with tension, their murmurs a constant reminder that everyone in town had a vested interest in this spectacle. Children leaned forward on tiptoes, wide-eyed with excitement, while the older men muttered warnings and predictions of his inevitable failure. Nayeli herself stood apart, leaning casually against a weathered oak, arms crossed. Her dark hair caught the sunlight, a wild halo framing a face that could be both playful and merciless. She watched him with an unreadable expression, her gaze sharp and steady, the kind of gaze that could make even the most confident man feel exposed. Jace swallowed hard but refused to let his nerves show. He had faced storms on the plains, dealt with rabid cattle, and even wrestled a runaway Mustang into submission, but nothing had prepared him for the gravity of this moment, the delicate balance of skill, courage, and something far more fragile, trust. He stepped forward, the gravel crunching under his boots, and raised his revolver. The sun reflected off the glass, blinding him momentarily, but he adjusted his aim. The first shot rang out, a sharp crack that echoed across the canyon. The bottle shattered, sparkling like fractured diamonds in the sunlight. A ripple of approval ran through the crowd, and Jace allowed himself a small, controlled exhale. One down. He could do this. The second bottle went down just as cleanly. He began to feel the rhythm of the challenge, the familiar harmony between his hands, his eyes, and the weight of the gun. But with each successive shot, the wind seemed to pick up, teasing his aim with its unpredictable gusts. Dust swirled around the bottles, making them dance on the edge of perception. The third shot wavered slightly but still connected, sending another cascade of glass to the ground. Jace's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the awareness that he was moving closer to the stakes he could not afford to lose. As he lined up for the fourth and fifth bottles, his mind wandered momentarily to his life on the ranch. Long nights under a sky littered with stars, the endless fields of tall grass, the horses he had raised from foals, and the loneliness that sometimes seeped into his bones. For years, he had believed that hard work and perseverance were the only currency worth earning. But here, in this dusty arena, he realized that courage and honesty had a value all their own. He wasn't just fighting for Nayeli's hand, he was fighting to prove to himself that he was capable of something greater than routine and solitude, something that required heart as much as skill. The sixth bottle wobbled under the influence of a sudden gust, and Jace adjusted instinctively, letting go of tension he hadn't realized he was holding. He fired. The bottle shattered in a perfect arc, sparkling in a way that seemed almost deliberate, almost like the canyon itself was celebrating his effort. He felt a surge of confidence, tempered by the knowledge that the final bottles would be the hardest. Not just because of the wind or the distance, but because the stakes had grown personal. Nayeli's eyes, still fixed on him, carried something he had never seen before, curiosity and an unspoken challenge of her own. She had not laughed, not mocked, not stepped back. She had simply observed, steady and sure, as though testing him in ways that had nothing to do with the guns or the bottles. And in that observation, Jace found an unexpected sense of connection. This wasn't a simple contest of skill. It was an unspoken dialogue between two people who understood the weight of pride, the fragility of trust, and the courage it took to stand naked in front of someone who could reject you entirely. With the seventh bottle in his sights, the wind kicked up again, stronger this time, and dust stung his eyes. He blinked rapidly, readjusted, and fired. The bottle wobbled precariously but held, for a heartbeat. Then, as if bowing to his determination, it toppled. The crowd gasped, a collective inhalation of tension, and Jace felt the tiniest flicker of triumph inside him. Only 2 more to go. 2 more that would seal everything, or shatter it. He took a deliberate step back, letting his mind clear. He remembered the lessons of the ranch, the long hours of waiting, the patience required to coax a stubborn horse, the resilience needed to weather a drought or a storm. He realized that those lessons had prepared him perfectly for this moment. It wasn't just about aim, it was about composure, about belief in oneself, and about honoring the challenge with integrity. He raised his revolver once more and let his training, instincts, and heart guide him. The 8th bottle went down cleanly. The 9th, slightly wobbly from the wind, seemed to hang in defiance for a fraction of a second before shattering. And then it was the last bottle. Jace felt a bead of sweat trickle down his temple. He steadied his breathing, felt the weight of the revolver in his hands, and focused not on the crowd, not on the stakes, not even on Nayeli, but on the simple act of placing his aim true and letting go. The shot rang out. The final bottle teetered, wavered, and then fell. Silence swept over the crowd, thick and electric, before it erupted into cheers. Children clapped, men hooted, and even a few of the older women in the back let out astonished laughter. Jace didn't smile immediately. He kept his gaze locked on Nayeli. She was walking toward him now, her expression still guarded, but her eyes had softened, ever so slightly, the faintest hint of approval, and maybe something deeper, something he had dared hope for. As the dust settled and the crowd's excitement became background noise, Jace lowered his revolver. He felt the fatigue from concentration and tension, but he also felt something else, a quiet pride, not in the skill of hitting bottles, but in having met the challenge with honesty, courage, and respect. And as Nayeli closed the distance between them, he realized that the true challenge had only just begun. Not the bottles, not the crowd, but the delicate task of earning her trust, her respect, and perhaps, in time, her heart. Nayeli stepped closer, the sound of her boots crunching on the dry gravel barely audible over the fading echoes of the crowd's applause. Her dark eyes, sharp and calculating moments before, now carried a depth of something entirely unexpected, curiosity, caution, and a hint of warmth. Jackson Harper, standing tall but still carrying the lingering tension of the challenge, felt a strange nervousness twist in his gut. The bottles had been conquered, the crowd had witnessed his skill, but none of that mattered now. What mattered was the moment between them, fragile and fleeting, like sunlight dancing on the edge of a canyon. You hit them all, Nayeli said, her voice calm, almost soft, but with an edge that betrayed the disbelief she was trying to conceal. How? Were you not afraid? There was no mockery in her tone, no condescension. Only the faintest trace of admiration, mingled with the wariness of someone who had long guarded her heart. Jackson chuckled quietly, a low, rough sound that seemed to carry the dust and sun of the plains. Afraid, he repeated, maybe a little, but fear has a funny way of shrinking when the stakes are worth it. He let his gaze sweep over her, not with possessiveness, but with genuine respect. And some things, some people, are worth the risk. Nayeli studied him, her expression unreadable. Her fingers brushed against a loose strand of hair, letting it fall carelessly over her shoulder. She had never met a man who approached her not with arrogance, not with charm, but with steady honesty. Most men who came into her life sought to impress, to boast, or to win some fleeting admiration. Jackson was different. She could feel it, not in the words he spoke, but in the quiet certainty of his presence, in the way he carried himself, in the patience in his gaze. You think hitting bottles proves anything? She asked, a faint smile teasing the corner of her lips. Do you think that's what it takes to win a heart? Jackson shook his head, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. No, he said softly. I know it doesn't. The bottles were just a way to meet you, to show I could try something hard without backing down. But I don't want to win you as a prize, Nayeli. I want to stand by you. I want to know you. To face life together, if you'll let me. For a long moment, Nayeli said nothing. The wind blew through the canyon, stirring the dust, rustling the edges of her cloak, and carrying with it the faint scent of sage and earth. Jackson felt time stretch thin, each heartbeat loud and insistent in his chest. He was acutely aware of the quiet courage it must take for her to let someone into her world, a world she had carefully defended with every ounce of strength she possessed. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying more weight than any shout. Most men I've met, they want me to be a challenge they can conquer. They want the story, the glory. They don't want the truth. Her gaze softened, the protective walls she had built around her heart flickering like candlelight in the wind. But I feel something different with you. You're not here to impress me, or to prove anything. You're real. Jackson took a step closer, careful not to crowd her space, letting his presence be steady and comforting. I've spent my life fighting for things I could see, things I could control. Cattle, land, storms, but meeting you, Nayeli, it's different. I can't control it, I can't predict it, and maybe that's the point. Maybe the things worth having are the ones that challenge us, that make us face ourselves, that make us brave enough to care. Her eyes glistened, and for the first time, Jackson saw the vulnerability she had hidden from the world. She had been untamed, unyielding, and yet in that quiet moment, she seemed almost fragile, human, capable of being touched by something genuine. Nayeli took a measured breath, then reached out her hand. The gesture was simple, almost casual, but it carried a lifetime of trust, a willingness to risk, and an invitation for something real to begin. Jackson took her hand gently, feeling the warmth, the firmness, and the spark of connection that had been growing since the first bottle fell. The crowd around them continued to cheer, oblivious to the quiet intimacy forming in the center of the dusty arena. The children clapped, the older men hooted, but none of it mattered. In that touch, there was a silent understanding. Courage was not just about guns or feats of skill. Courage was opening yourself to someone, trusting them, and allowing yourself to care, fully and without reservation. I don't know what the future holds, Nayeli admitted softly, her thumb brushing against his knuckles. I've learned to guard my heart, to protect it, but there's something in you, Jackson. Something steady, honest. I want to see where that goes. Jackson nodded, squeezing her hand lightly, grounding both of them in that moment. I don't have all the answers either, he said, but I know this. I want to face the storms, the challenges, the unknowns, with you. Not as a prize to be won, but as a partner, someone to rely on and to grow with. She smiled then, a radiant, disarming smile that seemed to illuminate the canyon itself. It was a smile that spoke of hope, of possibility, and of a willingness to embrace life with someone who respected her spirit rather than tried to tame it. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples, casting long shadows over the arena, over the bottles that now lay in shattered heaps, and over the two figures standing hand in hand. Jackson realized, as he looked into Nayeli's eyes, that the true victory of the day was not the challenge, not the shattered bottles, and certainly not the applause. It was the connection they had forged, the trust they had begun to build, and the quiet understanding that they could face life together, wild and unafraid. The bottles on the ground were only a symbol, a test that had proven more than skill, it had proven character, heart, and courage. The wind whispered through the canyon, carrying with it a sense of peace, of promise, of beginnings. Nayeli let go of his hand for a moment to adjust her cloak, but she didn't step back. She stayed close, allowing him into her world, letting herself feel the possibility of love and partnership without fear. Jackson, in turn, felt a calm he had not known in years, the kind of calm that comes not from victory, but from standing beside someone who challenges you to be better, to care deeper, to love without hesitation. As they walked away from the line of bottles together, their hands still intertwined, Jackson realized that bravery had many forms. There was the bravery of facing down a line of bottles, of holding a revolver steady in the sun. And then there was the quieter, more profound bravery of opening your heart to someone, trusting them with your truth, and walking forward together into an uncertain future. The applause and cheers faded into the background, replaced by the sound of their own steps, the wind, and the shared rhythm of hearts beginning to beat in unison. And in that moment, both of them understood something vital. Life's most meaningful victories were not won with skill alone, but with trust, patience, and the willingness to face the unknown with someone by your side. The rancher had met the challenge and proved his aim, but he had also met the girl who would forever change the course of his life, and she, in turn, had found a man who could meet her wild heart with respect, courage, and unwavering honesty. Together, they walked into the sunset, not as conqueror and prize, but as partners, as equals, as two hearts daring to trust in the possibility of love.